Nigeria's removal of fuel subsidy has introduced as a bold fiscal reform aimed at averting bankruptcy, reducing waste, and boosting revenue for infrastructure and social protection. Yet, nearly 3 years on, public debt has surged to an estimated 121 trillion naira, driven by exchange rate unification, rising debt service cost, and continued infrastructure financing, creating a policy paradox of subsidy savings alongside escalating borrowing. While institutions such as the CPPE say the reform has improved fiscal transparency and strengthened the FAAC allocations to states, critical questions around the sustainability of current debt trajectory against the backdrop of debt continues over whether Nigeria is stabilizing its economy or merely reshaping its debt burden, and whether rising revenue are translating into real development under mounting fiscal pressure. Well, joining the conversation this evening is Obafemi George. He's a political scientist and a member of the All Progressives Congress. He's with me live in the studio. I also have Bola Olojede. Is an economist. He joins virtually from Lagos. Gentlemen, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dapo.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
All right. So before we get into the crux of the conversation, let's just take a bit of a detour to something that is pretty pressing in the country and your take on it. And that is the recent abductions that we saw in Oyo State and, of course, has continued to generate reactions from Nigeria and pressure on the government to do something. Permit me to do present a bit of statistics here as presented by Premium Times. Under the Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration, it says about 9 incidents and a total of 551 students have been abducted between 2023 till date. And of course, there is a breakdown of these abductions in comparison to the Buhari administration, that's between 2015 to 2023, where a total of 10 incidents and 1,127 students, were abducted. Now, the question is this. We've seen a lot of efforts from the government in terms of spending, in terms of deployment, but we still continue to see abductions, not just of students alone and their teachers, of Nigerians generally, and this happens daily. Let me start with you. Mr. Olojede, what is the missing gap here? What are we not getting right?
I don't think it's a single thing that we're not getting right. I think it's a problem with multiple dimensions. And one of the glaring part is the fact that it appears as if there are no consequences for criminality. So when you go back, all the way back to when all these mass abductions started, you need to ask the question, so how many of the people that were involved in these mass abductions have been arrested, prosecuted, and punished when found guilty? How many of their sponsors have we been able to track down and bring to justice? There's a problem with a situation in which it appears as if there are no consequences for crime. When there are no consequences for crime, the message we are sending is that it's okay for us. Another one can come and we will deal with it and move on. Rather than consequences for this crime, what we have been seeing are just the rewards for the crime. So the people who do the kidnap will come forward, they will demand ransom, the people that were kidnapped will be released, and then we move on. Of course, when those people want to do another one, they put it together again, they do another one, they receive the money, they release the children, and then they move on. And then they do yet another one. So there must be not just that we must find a way to stop the reward for criminality, but we must also ensure that those who are involved in this criminality are made to bear the brunt and to send a strong message that we will not tolerate this. So the rest of the issues are around how do we get them to pay to bear the consequences of their criminality.
All right, thank you very much. Let me bring it to the studio, Mr. George. What Mr. Aloje there said is there seems to be a gap in justice being admitted, consequences for actions. Do you think this has been missing?
I agree partly with what he said, and I disagree partly. And the reason why I said I disagree partly is because this present government is doing some things that weren't done before up until now, which I strongly believe that we'll begin to see the effect. Just today, the people that masterminded the killings in Owo in June 2022, they've just been sentenced to hanging today. And if I recollect, I'm not sure, I mean, I didn't have the time to check the data. I think that's the first time that we're actually sentencing these perpetrators, you know, to die by hanging. That's number one. I also interrogated the data of what have happened in the past 1 month, especially when that horrific incident of May 15th in Ibadan happened. And I realized that the gap actually is that we are actually not communicating the successes. I know that in journalism, bad news is breaking news. In the month of May alone, when this thing happened, I realized that on the 2nd of May, soldiers rescued 32 Nigerians that were abducted and kidnapped in Katsina State on the 2nd of May. The same month of May, on 2 different occasions, our soldiers rescued abductees in Goza local government in Benue. In the month of May, also, our soldiers, in partnership with the U.S. Army, killed Menok, I don't know how to pronounce his name properly, who was number 2 man in ISIS globally, was killed in this month of May alone. I also checked the records that between January and May 2026, our soldiers, our army under this administration, in partnership with the U.S. Army, the African arm, they've killed over 1,100 terrorists. No government has done that prior to this time. 1,100. Now, the reason why it looks as if, I mean, we see a surge in this, and this is my understanding. If you check, prior to 2022, if you check from West Africa, Sierra Leone, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, Mali, Mauritania, Niger, Chad, Central African Republic, all those French-speaking countries had a military pact with France. From 2022, they began to break those military pacts. And they actually told France to withdraw their soldiers from the entire Sahel region. And if you look at it, you will see that the moment French soldiers were sent packing from those French-speaking regions, terrorism exploded as in like 5,000%. So terrorists took over that entire stretch. And that's part of the price we are paying today, because it is no longer a Nigerian thing. It's now an African thing. And that's why you realize that what you see happening in Nigeria, what happened in Oyo on the 15th of May, a similar thing happened in Burkina Faso about 2 months ago. They went to school, kidnapped school children, killed people.
But do you think the government, before we move into, of course, the crux of today's conversation, do you think the government is actually doing enough to send home a message of consequences for action? Where I'm going is this. For instance, the initiative of the repentant, so-called repentant terrorists, where they are rehabilitated, they are put in a space, and then, you know, they are taken through a process and then reintegrated back into society. Should such an initiative still exist in times like this?
You know, I mean, like I just told you, I mean, record says that they've actually killed 1,100 terrorists, which is the highest so far. Now, that reintegration process, I was listening to the Minister of Defense, who was the former Chief of Defense Staff, General Musa, and I used to have a different opinion. I used to share this kind of sentiment that who measures repentance? Someone has killed hundreds of people, then he comes, he says he has repented, then you pardon him and integrate him. It didn't make sense to me. But I listened to him last Friday, and he explained that when they captured some of those terrorists, that they realized that when those bandits attacked those villages, that they will actually line them up. They will separate the boys, the men on one side, they'll put their parents on one side, they will kill their parents in their presence and tell them, you join us, you leave. You don't join us, we kill you. And that was how most of them were coerced into banditry. And that when they arrested them and they interrogated, that was when they realized that, oh, this was how some of them actually got into it. And that those are the ones that they reintegrated back into the society. That the main criminals, the ringleaders, that they are killing them.
The victims of this, where does that leave them?
So, and that's why I share your passion, because you see, from the experience of what I've seen in Jaws, what causes reprisal attack is lack of justice. So this person killed my parents. And 6 months down the line, I see him walking on the street. I take laws into my hands. I'm waiting for the day I'm going to take my pound of flesh. And that's why I said I share your sentiment when it comes to that. But you see, we also need to balance it because we don't live in a jungle. We live in a society where there is justice. You can imagine people that killed people in our church since 2022. 4 years after, justice has just been done 4 years after. So maybe we also need to look at the justice system. Maybe we also need to set up a tribunal that can actually try bandits in a matter of 1 or 2 months so that we don't go to court and spend 4 years in court trying to, bring to book someone that has killed hundreds of Nigerians innocently.
All right, we'll go on a quick break. When we return, of course, we will delve straight into the topic of conversation, which, of course, has to do with the economic reforms of the current administration. Stay with us. We'll be right back. You're still watching Politics HQ on News Central Television. And, of course, I still have my guest with me. Bafemi George is a political scientist and a member of the All Progressives Congress, and Bola Olojede is an economist. Gentlemen, thank you for staying with me. All right, now let's get straight to it. When this current administration came into power, part of the things it keeps boasting about is that it removed subsidy amongst the plethora of other initiatives. The aim was to improve the economy, curb corruption, block leakages, ensure that there's excess funds that can be diverted into infrastructural development and all of that. But my question is this. It's been 3 years. By next year, we are looking at next election. Has the removal of subsidy really delivered that fiscal relief that was the original objective, according to the current administration? I'll start with you, Mr. Olojede.
Is that, especially at the lower rung of the ladder, we've not been able to translate whatever might have been the gains of some of the bold policies to let it percolate down the ladder so that everybody can feel it. But it would not be correct to say that we have not made some macroeconomic gains by virtue of those policies. And the reason I say that is that before the policies, we were actually living a lie. There are so many lies around there. For example...
Okay, because I was about asking, if you can just elaborate on what many of these lies were.
Yes, I will tell you some of the lies. Some of the lies, for example, was the reality that we have about $5 billion on the CBN window, made up of LCs that we could not pay. So nobody captured that as if we are owing something. But in reality, that was a debt that was there. We were not able to pay it. In fact, to paint the picture more vividly, I had consulted for some people in 2022 who did a transaction, a 24.5 billion naira transaction. When we went to CBN to take the first bid, do you know how much CBN allocated to us out of $24.5 million? They allocated $15,000 to us out of 24.5. If they were allocating 15,000 every bid, it probably would take us 10 years to fully pay down on that particular LC. The other part is the fact that some of what we were calling reserves way back then, they did not exist. They were things that have been pledged against some borrowings there and there and all of that. So we were literally living a lie before that period. I think where the disconnect might have happened with this policy is that there might not have been enough preparation for the consequences of fuel subsidy removal. So when the effect, which was further complicated by the unification of the exchange rate, which it complicated that matter, and the effect hit the economy, there was no soft landing anywhere. So the people had to carry the pain as bad as it was. But if you look at that 2023, for example, look at corporate profit. And a very good place to have a glimpse at corporate profit is to look at the listed companies. The entire NGX, the result of the companies on NGX were bloody. You saw an entire multinational, the capital totally wiped out. Everybody posting mega losses all over the whole place. But when you look at what has happened subsequently, those same companies that were posting mega losses in the heat of the effect of that policy have turned profit. In fact, they have turned mega profit as we speak. The extreme volatility of the foreign exchange that happened also about the same time. In fact, in February 2024, the exchange rate actually tasted 1,900 to a dollar. It went all the way from 500 to 600, 900, 1,000, 1,900 before it started to come back. But what has happened since the second half of 2024 is that volatility has stopped. As a matter of fact, the Naira has appreciated against the dollar in 2025 and even in the current year that we are. What we have not been able to do properly is that those macroeconomic gains, we have not been able to translate it to make it percolate down so that everybody
because that exactly is where I'm going to with my next question. Because, I mean, those are, from your analysis, you've taken it from a macro, that's, the top, a macroeconomic angle, which, of course, is good. But I think the main impact here has to do with the micro, and that's at the family level, at the petty business level, traders and all of that, SMEs. So I think that will make me direct my question to you, Mr. George. Why is it not being felt at the micro level?
So like if you get pregnant today, you cannot give birth today. Even our Lord Jesus' conception, which was immaculate, Mary still had to carry him for 9 months before she brought forth. I mean, meaning that when a government gets the macro level right, fiscal policies, monetary policies, it doesn't translate to micro overnight. It takes a while. Because what the fiscal and monetary policy does is that it stabilizes the economy. It gives investors confidence that this is a stable economy. And don't take my words for it. I mean, look at, for instance, the most recent is the S&P's rating. But I've just rated Nigeria from B- to B+. And if you read that report, I mean, they mentioned 4 things that they felt contributed to the stability of our economy: fuel subsidy removal, foreign exchange unification, and transparency. And they actually also did mention Executive Order 9, I mean, which stipulated that inflow from crude oil sales should go directly to Federation account, and some other things. Now, what that means is that investors from across the world could see that this is a stable economy. Where it begins to impact on the society is that when foreign investors comes in and they set up industries, they set up companies, youths get employed, the multiplier effect is where we begin to feel it at that level. And I'll give you 1 or 2 examples to let you know that we are on that track. You remember that Shell put out of Nigeria a couple of years ago. Shell MD came back to Nigeria early this year. And I'm quoting him word for word. He said, Nigeria has become one of the most attractive investment destinations for Shell globally because of the sustained economic transformation of this government. And because of that, they've pledged to invest $20 billion in our economy. That is how things get to the macro. Because it is not government that creates jobs. It is not government that will employ people. It is not. The job of government is to create that enabling environment. And that's what this macro is doing. And I give you 2 more examples that I'm aware because I'm into real estate. The largest hotel chain in the entire world. Number one, I wouldn't mention their name, for advert purpose.
Commercial purpose.
Yeah, the largest hotel chain in the entire world. They've come to Nigeria. As I speak to you, they've started their first project in VI, 27-story building, hotel apartment, the first of its kind in Nigeria. And they want to do series of such across the entire country, investing billions of dollars. That's number one. Number two, another, supermarket chain, second largest in France, fourth largest in Europe. They're already in Nigeria. They've opened first 2 stores. They're going to open in 11 cities across Nigeria. This is how it gets to the macro. This is how jobs are created.
But
and it's a gradual thing.
Yeah, but there are also concerns as regards, the lifeline, for instance, is oil.
Yes.
Oil, people move around. Once there's a spike and a change in the price, cascades. We saw that happen immediately. Mr. President said subsidy is gone. And that, of course, had ripple effect. And so there are concerns as to, petrol at some point moved from 500, less than 500 naira to what it is right now, over 1,000 naira per liter. And Nigerians are saying, look, is it not time that there is some sort of intervention in this sector? Yes, you removed subsidy to cut the leaks. But right now, it's affecting the cost of living. Should there not be some sort of intervention in that regard as against these palliatives that is being handed, around in the name of, we're trying to help people get by?
So you see, once you remove subsidy, you don't go to wake up the death of subsidy.
So what can be done to bring down the price of petrol? That's where I'm going.
So once you have deregulated a sector, what that means is that that sector is left to market forces. Government doesn't interfere again. So if government can no longer determine the price of petrol, it's been completely deregulated. What you are implying is that, there should be an intervention. No, that would take us back to the days of fuel subsidy. So we shouldn't even be discussing it. We are out of it. We are out of it permanently. Because if we go back to it, it will sink the country. And we will lose whatever gains we've gotten in the past 3 years. So we cannot go back to it. The question then is, how long will this go on? Because of investment we are having in infrastructure. Now, what we're experiencing is actually a real economy. Not a voodoo economy that we've been practicing for the past 25 years.
But this real economy is causing hardship.
But it is temporary, because you know why I said it's temporary? Every nation we envy in the world, they've gone through this path. And I can begin to cite examples for you from China to Singapore to Dubai to Rwanda, and we can begin to look at the figures.
All right. Let me also direct the same question to Mr. Olojede. Mr. Olojede, do you think that some sort of intervention should be brought back to petrol because of the effect it's having on the cost of living of Nigerians? People are complaining.
Well, I think some intervention are already being attempted. We have to be very careful about how we intervene. An intervention, for example, was the promotion of the CNG option as an alternative energy source. And the CNG did not catch up with cars. Many people were not converting. But there was a significant uptake with trucks. So whether it is the Dangote trucks or the NMPC trucks, if you see 10 of those trucks now, 6 of them or more will be CNG trucks. What that is supposed to do is that CNG costs probably about 25% of what diesel will cost. And it will translate to a reduction in interstate movement of these trucks as they bring, whether it is food they are bringing or they are bringing petroleum product and all of that. That's some sort of intervention.
All right.
I think we can do a lot more in that space.
All right.
Okay.
I know you have a lot to say, but we need to go on a quick break. When we return, we'll, of course, be addressing another elephant in the room. Subsidy has been removed, but then our debt profile continues to rise. Why is that? Stay with us, O'Brien. You're still watching Politics HQ on News Central Television. I still have my guest with me. Obafemi George is a political scientist and also a member of the All Progressives Congress. Bola Olojede is an economist, and of course, he joins virtually. Gentlemen, thank you for staying with me. All right, now let's talk about Nigeria's rising debt profile, right? Which many have considered disturbing. Even though Mr. President has said in his words, borrowing is not leprosy, we just have to work hard to be able to pay back. But again, it counters the promise being made that the reason for the removal of subsidy, part of it was to allow for more funds, pool of funds to be able to spend. But right now, what we are seeing is a country that seems to be spending so much on debt servicing. I'm starting with you, Mr. Bonao. Why is this?
Well, it doesn't appear as if we're making enough money. I've always been an advocate of the need for us to rev up our revenue. Because our revenue is so tiny, it constrains our capacity to borrow. And that is what is putting pressure on this, part of what is putting pressure on this economy. You look at the entire budget, the expenditure budget of Nigeria, and it is just about 25% of South Africa's budget. South Africa is 60 million people, for crying out loud. There is no way, it is always a very difficult task to share 2 chicken laps among 3 elders. That is the origin of our problems. The revenue is tiny. So when your revenue is tiny, you must watch how you borrow. Because contrary to certain proponents of the fact that our revenue to GDP is still within the bounds of reasonability, the truth is that nobody repays debt from GDP. You repay it from revenue. So as long as you're not able to rev up that revenue dramatically, you must be mindful of how you borrow. It is also leading in the wrong direction because borrowing is now being demonized as it is horrible to, it is not exactly a horrible thing to borrow. But if you are not making enough money to repay this debt, it becomes horrible. And we are not making enough revenue as we are, whether it is from oil or from taxes or from other sources. Everybody had how much of last year's revenue, for example, came in. Some ministry barely receive anything for capital project. So it shows that we're not making enough money. We must be careful how we borrow when we're not making enough money.
All right. Is this the case, Mr. George? Because, there's also, the administration boasting of making so much money from all non-oil sectors, comparison to what we've seen in the past. Yet, Mr. Olajide is saying we are not making enough money as a country.
I think to start with, we need to look at the figures and see where we're actually coming from. Before subsidy was removed, we were borrowing to pay salaries. We were borrowing to service loan. So even the borrowing we're borrowing to pay subsidy, we're also borrowing to service the loans with which we were even paying for the subsidy. So we were not just on ground zero, we were ground sub-zero. Now, people will say, oh, you've taken out subsidy. So then where is the money? And the answer is simple. We were not making money during subsidy days. We were borrowing during subsidy days. So what has happened is that we've stopped borrowing to pay subsidy. Now that subsidy is no longer there, number one. Number two, yes, in certain areas, non-oil proceeds, income has gone up. NRS told us that, prior to 2023, probably we made like 3 trillion. And last year, Zach boasted that we made about 22 trillion. Yes, we have. But the question then is, where does that money go to? And that's why the states today they are smiling to the bank. I was just told last week of a particular local government in Southwest that was getting like 40, 60 million naira per month from FARC. And currently, the same local government is getting 600 million naira in 1 month from FARC. And so when you look at that, you can understand, what has happened to the economy. Now, when people now say that, why are we still borrowing? The question is, what are we borrowing for? I love to do comparative analysis because that's the best way you know that, okay, really, it's not that what we are doing is wrong. Because economies all over the world, let's even take United States economy for instance. That's the largest economy in the world. When Donald Trump came in a year and a half ago, debt profile of US was $33 trillion. In 15 months, it has grown to 37 trillion US dollars. That is the largest economy in the world. All this borrowing that the present government is doing, if we're going to be sincere, I know it's election year. I mean, so everything is politicized. But if we're really going to be honest and be sincere, there's nowhere you will turn. You will not see that this borrowing is actually going directly into infrastructure. And the proof, we can see it. So we are no longer borrowing to spend. We're no longer borrowing to pay salaries. We are borrowing to finance infrastructure. Either it's Lagos, Calabar, or it is Lagos, Badagry, Sokoto, whether it is Muritala Mohammed Airport, whether it is Tinkan and Apapa Port. Everywhere you turn, you can literally, physically see what we are borrowing to do. And like I said, if we look at other countries, this is how they have built a great economy. I mean, I was looking at comparative analysis of certain countries. Today, all of us talk about Singapore. Oh, third world to first world. We're at the same level with Nigeria. But I checked their debt profile. As of this year, almost $1 trillion is their debt profile. I looked at Dubai, over $100 billion being owned by state-owned enterprise. That's how you build those things. And if you look at our debt to GDP ratio,
okay, because that's where I'm going.
If you look at GDP ratio, now IMF says that the cutoff line is 55%. That's where a country should begin to get worried. Now, what is our debt to GDP ratio as of today? 32%. United States debt to GDP ratio is 175%. Japan, which is a manufacturing powerhouse, debt to GDP ratio in Japan is 200%. Even if you come to Africa, I mean, Mr. Lojeri is an economist, mentioned South Africa, which is today the largest economy in Africa. Their debt to GDP ratio is 75%. Now, people are comparing Nigeria to Rwanda. Say, let's just go and look at Rwanda. Rwanda's debt to GDP ratio is 77%.
All right.
And we are still just at 32%. So we should stop demonizing borrowing as if, oh, this government is reckless. We can see, we can interrogate what they are borrowing to finance, which is infrastructure.
All right, gentlemen, I wish we had so much time to continue the conversation, but this is where we would, of course, wrap it up on this one. Many thanks to you, Mr. Obafemi. George is a political scientist and a member of the All Progressives Congress. Agbola Olojede is an economist. Gentlemen, once again, thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Good to be here tonight.
Thanks for having us.
All right.